You're watching Time and Tide, because watches aren't boring.
Thank you. Thank you very much, pretend audience. Welcome to a special edition of Watch and Chill with a different format to usual. Look, it's a pinch yourself moment for us at Time and Tide. We have been invited by Zenith to globally launch the last of the 50th anniversary El Primero special editions. And in the process, we're going to tell you all about the amazing story of the El Primero movement. But before we do that, I'd like to welcome to the show an El Primero lover and one hell of a comedian, Mr. Will Ferrell. Okay, Will's not here, but he would be the perfect opening guest because he loves his El Primero and wears it often. But given the chance to interview Will Ferrell, I wouldn't ask him about watches. My first question would be about the last time he was here in Melbourne and his views on Australian cuisine.
And your secret to fitness is you only eat wombat meat.
That is untrue.
It is delicious. The national food of Australia.
Not the national food of Australia. Other El Primero loving guests we have on the show are the founder of Revolution, Mr. Wei Koh, talking about the recent CoverGirl limited edition. Also, WOSstep trained watchmaker, Mr. Michael Woods, who's going to take us inside the movement and tell us why it's so magical. We are starting with what's in the box because my wrist is feeling a little naked right now, and I have a feeling that there may be something in the box to remedy that. Behold, a renovated box. This is much more fancy than usual. Inside the box, we have, well, what do you know? A Zenith Chronomaster 38mm El Primero. What a watch. This has been shipped in just for the show because I wanted to be wearing something that was perfectly on theme, right down to the fact that we have the 38mm version here. Now, this story begins with a text message. I had heard from Zenith that a little box had been found in the attic of the manufacturer, and in that box was the inspiration that the brand needed to do one final 50th anniversary edition watch to celebrate that big birthday of the El Primero. Now, this dusty box in the attic story is one I've heard many times before. Every single time I picture that scene from The Never-Ending Story where the boy finds the book, sweeps it off and opens it up. So I wrote back and I said, really, show me. Show me the attic. Show me the box. Show me the dust. A day later, I received a message on my phone, and this was it.
Hello everyone, my name is Julien Tornare and I'm the CEO of Zenith, and I wanted to tell you a quite amazing and secret story. A year and a half ago, when we were preparing the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the El Primero movement, I received a phone call from two colleagues of mine who told me, Julien, you have to come to the famous attic of Charles Vermeau as we made a quite amazing discovery. As soon as I received this call, I left the meeting I was attending and I went right here where I am at the door of the famous attic from Charles Vermeau. Let's get in there together. You realize the very special atmosphere here, and it's been quite an incredible story. I'm sure you all know about Charles Vermeau, who decided to hide all the components and everything from the El Primero movement. And it was remained in this particular room for 10 years. You can see here that the door was actually broken, and he built a brick wall to protect this. But by protecting all this, nobody knew that some hidden things would reappear years after. I'm talking 50 years after. And this is exactly what happened when we looked into a few furnitures like this one, and we managed to find a quite incredible object, which you can see right here, which is a little box a little box with amazing dials that are here. You see these dials with 3 shades of blue that are quite incredible because they never got commercialized. They were probably made as prototypes, and it's only by founding them that we realized that they never got on the markets and nobody knows about them. So we decided to make a special edition, a tribute again to Charles Vermeau and to this great story, and a manufacture edition that will only be available here in the manufacture. Thank you to all of you, and see you soon.
Can I just stop and say how cool that is? That my cynicism to say, all right, another dusty box story, show me, ends with Julien going to the attic himself to show me not only the location and a little bit of the story behind that, but also the box, the dials, the beginning of this great story of the last El Primero edition. Thank you, Julien. And straight after that, I thought, well, we've got to explore this more. We've got to have a Zoom call and talk about the birthday bash that has been, the year of editions that we've had, recapping every single one to celebrate the El Primero's birthday. And the first thing I wanted to know from Julien in that Zoom call was what happened next.
Julien, welcome to this Watch and Chill special El Primero edition. Now, do you still have that attic dust on your shoulder, or?
Almost, almost. I was there yesterday, and I have to say, the more I spend time in the manufacturer, the more I want to go there because there is such a special atmosphere. Yeah.
Now we're going to hold any more discussion about that particular dial you found and how this might now be part of a watch. And I want you to tell me about the place that this movement has. It's a household name. Not many movements can claim that. Why is the El Primero such a well-known movement?
It became a very, very well-known movement because first of all, it was made in the 60s, during the time when many companies were racing for the best chronograph. I mean, the whole world was around chronograph during those decades. And people wanted to have the most precise, the most high-tech. And at Zenith, there was such a, entrepreneur spirit, startup spirit, and a team of people that really wanted to make it happen. By the way, during the celebration last year of the 50th of the El Primero, I met 8 people who made the El Primero. I'm not sure I told you the story, but the oldest was born in 1939, the youngest in 1945. Amazing people in their 80s. And they not only they told me stories, but they showed me how much energy and creativity they had during those years. And the movement became the very first one. That's why it's called El Primero. In Spanish, it means the first. To be fully integrated automatic chronograph with a high frequency, which means high precision. So they won the race, and since that day, the movement became a legend over the years. 2019 was obviously a huge year, and when I joined the company in 2017, many people told me, we need to celebrate this in a big way because it's such an iconic movement and within this beautiful brand. So I really worked early, I would say very early in 2018 to do some research and to prepare the celebration. So we went in, I think, more than 20 cities around the world where we presented a few limited editions and where we told the story of Charles Vermeau, who basically preserved and protected the whole El Primero story, because during the quartz crisis, American owners wanted to destroy everything and go only for quartz. And Charles Vermeau took a big risk for himself because he hid every single component, plans, and things in the attic. So I had to give tribute not only to the movement and to the anniversary, but I have to give tribute to Charles Vermeau. It's not a marketing makeup. It's a true story of Zenith, very authentic. So we've been sharing this story of Charles Vermeau and the special editions that we made together all over the world.
And the first one is one that I discovered back in Basel in 2019, which was the A386 revival, and there was this amazing box set.
Yes, again, we wanted to make something very special, so we created. We went very close to the original piece without making exactly the same. Why? Because people owning the vintage one, they don't want a copy. We cannot make a copy of it. It wouldn't be, I would say, respectful. So we decided to make a very, very similar watch but we opened the back, we changed a few things here and there, and we made a limited edition of 3 times 50 pieces. One in white gold, one in yellow gold, one in rose gold. And we decided to do something quite amazing also. I think we were the first brand ever to do that. We gave 50 years warranty to these watches, saying that if you buy the watch, let's say you buy the watch, you give it to your son one day or to your daughter or to a friend, whoever. This person has a document that says that if you show up in 50 years with the watch and the warranty, you get another 50 years of warranty because El Primero is forever. The shape is incredible. It's a kind of a tonneau shape with a little round effect around the dial, and it's a very typical shape of Zenith. So we are very well known for that shape. And what I realized is that that watch had been relaunched, I think 10 years ago, in a big size, in an XL size, but never in the original size, which for me is so well balanced that this is the way we had to do it. Many end clients wrote to me and asked me, why don't you relaunch also the very famous bracelet, the iconic Gay Frère bracelet, which was made in the 70s? Exactly. We also call it the ladder bracelet because it has these little holes like this and it looks like a ladder. And this is the watch, you know, nice, very iconic shape. So I said, okay, guys, you are right. We are going to relaunch it. And we did it, etc., etc. And this shape became also a huge success for us since last year. And very recently, I don't know if you want me to talk now about this one, but this is kind of a modern version of the A384, which we just launched recently. It's basically an A384, but with a microblasted titanium, which gives a little contemporary touch on a vintage design.
Now, the original of that in the 70s, was that a PVD?
Yes, it was, yeah. The original of that one was a little bit wider. And when we found, basically we found 4 pieces like this one in the attic. We realized that it was never commercialized. It's actually with the Edge of Space that we started to use that particular rendering, which is beautiful and gives, I would say, some depth in the case, in the color. It's a super elegant material, very nice to touch, very nice to have on your wrist. It's something that we don't do too much. I would say now we have 3 models with this material, but we love the result. Yeah.
There's 2 to go. There's the G381, the Hodinkee Revival Edition. Tell me the story there.
With the Hodinkee, yes. I mean, same, you know. Hodinkee, they have the right clientele, and they've been very much interested into Zenith vintage. Of course, through the celebration of last year, I said, okay, let's do something together. And they wanted to tease the market with this one. And it got, again, the aesthetic, the little details that we worked together. People loved it because it has the spirit of Zenith. It has a special touch. And I think, if I remember well, they sold out the whole line in an hour and 18 minutes or something like this. So it was almost instantly sold out.
We have the one last one, the big reveal on your wrist. Tell me, you know, knowing that you didn't want to have too many, how did this one make its way into the mix this late in the game? Tell me what happened once you found those dials in the attic that we saw earlier.
But, you know, when we got those dials, of course, we met, and I immediately called my close colleagues, and we discussed about that. We said, first of all, they are beautiful. They are in good conditions, and they are beautiful. What do we do with them? I said, it's part of the treasure. We cannot only create a watch and make it in the regular collection. We cannot only create a watch out of this dial and ship it to the whole world. We have to make it special. As you may know, we have been the first manufacturer worldwide to open up our doors to public visits. Every Friday, now I doubled, so it's also Wednesdays, you can visit the Zenith manufacturer. We totally opened the door. So since these dials were found in the heart of the manufacturer, I said, let's make a special watch that we will call a manufacturer edition, only available at the manufacturer. And this has been a great discussion we had, because the 3 shades of blue, like your shirt today, beautiful blue, we decided let's do it a very, very cool and special edition not to make quantities, but when you see someone wearing that watch in a plane or in a party or anywhere, you'll know that this person went to Le Loc in the middle of the Swiss mountains to visit our manufacturer. And I think the concept is innovative and quite cool. So here is the watch. Now you can see it on my wrist, you know, with the 3 different colors of blue. Of course, it's better to see in real, but you will see the different slight blues that we've been working on. So super elegant, 38 millimeters, respecting all the codes of the watch from the late 60s, but with this little touch of blue, which again was never ever done.
Tell me, Julien, if someone's watching this and they want to buy it online because they're in lockdown, is that possible for a short period of time?
Yes, it is, of course, and you are asking the right question, because today the problem is we wanted to make a big launch today to invite many people to the manufacturer. Unfortunately, with the lockdown, we cannot, and we don't know when we'll be able to resume regular visits. So we decided to combine it with our e-commerce launch in many markets, and to get this piece available also on our online website and e-commerce system. The only thing I want to do, because I really want these people to feel the emotion, to feel the passion, to feel what I do feel when I'm in the attic. So I'd like every owner to come to visit the manufacturer. And that would be great, you know, to have like I will prepare a special book, something where every single owner will write something about what they feel entering the attic, because honestly, it's an amazing place, and you don't have so many authentic stories like that, authentic locations like the attic, where you feel you really feel the weight of history in a good way. And I would love to take them personally to the attic. I think every single owner of this watch should go and really touch the dial, see the box, see exactly where it came from. So you get a very special experience, and believe me, I'll make sure to be here. As much as I'm not traveling or I'm not in Australia or somewhere else, I'll make sure to be there.
Julien, thank you so much. It's a real honor to be part of the launch of this special watch. I can't wait to see it in the metal, but it sounds like I'll either have to buy one online or wait for the flights to start again.
You have to come and visit me for sure. I'll wait for you.
So there you have it, an invitation from the CEO of Zenith, Mr. Julien Tornare, to all future owners of the Chronomaster Revival Manufacture Edition. Now, it's time for me to go into a little bit more detail about the watch, some other really interesting facts about it. Firstly, there are no records of this dial configuration, so we will never know whether Charles Vermeau intended this to be a future model or whether it was a contender to be the opening model that he favoured the tricolour version over. We will never know. The watch also features exactly the same movement that powered the 1969 model, which is a high-frequency automatic column wheel chronograph. Now, with all this great storytelling, you'd expect the packaging to be pretty nifty too. Zenith haven't let you down. The watch comes in a book-style case, which can be hidden on your bookshelf. And it also includes a comic book which tells the story of Charles Vermeau. Now, as Julien said, this watch is available online for a short period of time until the manufacturer opens up, and that original idea of having people go back to Mecca, go back to base to pick this watch up is able to be realised. Details about where to buy the watch online will appear in the description below. Okay, coming up next is a man who knows all about Zenith limited editions, especially in the 50th anniversary of the El Primero year. It's Mr. Wei Koh from Revolution, the man behind one of the hottest limited editions of the last 12 months. I'm going to say that and mean that from my heart, Mr. Wei Koh, because we had that in a list of our favourite ever media collaborations and limited editions, so you know it's legit. It was the CoverGirl limited edition. Tell me, how did this happen? What is the story behind this beautiful watch?
Oh, thank you very much. Well, you know, I guess as part of the shared history I have with the El Primero was I was born in 1969 as well. So I'm old as dirt.
You're also a classic, Wei. This I know from years of knowing you.
Very kind way of you saying that. I would say old and decrepit, but nonetheless. No, I mean, you know, like 1969, it's extraordinary because it's the same year that the Seiko Astron is launched, right? So you have on one side, you've got the onset of the quartz crisis, although they call it the quartz revolution outside of Switzerland. And at the same time, you've got the world's first integrated automatic chronograph, right? Beating it at 5 hertz, no less. So, I mean, something rather extraordinary. From a pure technical perspective, always been one of my favorite movements. It's in a lot of my favorite watches, including the Zenith powered Daytonas as well. And, you know, I just love what Julien has been doing with the brand in terms of really embracing the heritage, but moving the brand forward. And they started to make just some of the most awesome limited editions. In fact, I would actually say the Philips one, based on the A384, is one of my favorites of all time. So, you know, I've always been a fan of the cover girl. I love the fact that it's on Manfred Vossler's book on the cover, and it's then been given that name. I love the fact that it's got this kind of dope Superman blue color, and I love the fact that it's got a pulsograph and a tachymeter integrated into one scale. And so when I asked Julien if we could have the great honor of working on this watch together, otherwise known as the A3818, created in 1971 actually, he gave us a thumbs up, and so that's it, man. You know, our allocation was just 50 watches in that one evening, and I know from them also they've sold out their watches as well, which is not to brag, but it's just also to highlight that they're going to give the factory prototype of that watch up for this charity auction that we're going to be doing, which I know we had discussed talking about later. But anyway, yeah, so that's the A3818 cover girl, which I would wear, except I went into lockdown before I could get the bracelet size.
Now, do you remember the first time we met?
Andrew,
Because I do. No, I definitely do. It was in the lobby of a hotel in Melbourne. And I reckon one of your first questions to me, which I'll never forget, was tell me your favorite myth about a particular brand. And since then I've realized, do you remember that?
It was in the Park Hyatt.
Yes, that's correct. You're back on. You're back online. I'm glad. You nearly broke my heart there for a second. You're like, who was this guy again? No, you asked me that question, and I've since realized that is the best question to ask a fellow watch lover. So I'm going to ask you now, what is your favorite myth about the El Primero? I mean, just to quickly say that mine, certainly around the Zenith El Primero movements, is that marketing stunt they did in the 70s where they attached the El Primero to the landing gear of a jumbo jet and flew the plane and landed the plane with the El Primero on the landing gear. Fact or fiction, we'll never know. There's pictures of it. Seems to be legit. But what is your favorite myth about the El Primero?
I guess I have two. I mean, I guess the one that everyone knows is about Mr. Bromeau, kind of hiding the stamping tools. Basically, again, when the quartz crisis hits and Switzerland is decimated, I mean, I think by 10 years later, I think that 75% of the jobs have been lost, and people are selling mechanical watch movements by weight. People are throwing away their lathes and their stamping machines, and Charles Bromeau actually hides everything, all these tools that are invaluable for the creation of the El Primero, because he believes that the mechanical watchmaking will return, and he actually saved the El Primero because of this. But I guess the other myth that I love about the El Primero is up until like the late 80s, Rolex was making their Daytonas with Valjoux 72 movements, right? I always find it kind of funny because the Rolex, the Rolex case is an oyster case, which means you've got a crown that screws down, making it water resistant, which is what Rolex was known for. But in the initial versions of the watch, the 6239 and the 6241, which I have one of, they're pump pushers, which means that even if you screw the crown down, it's still water resistant. So what's the point of even having a screw down crown, right? So those watches, and people would jump into the water with those watches on, and then their watches would get flooded. So I guess, and then, I guess in the later, the 6235s, 626, 63s and 6265s, they decided to put screw guards on the pushers to prevent the ingress of water, but it was still not a perfect solution. So what they needed was an automatic movement, basically, right? And it was the manual line Daytonas actually is interesting because they were not very successful. So in 1988, when they launched their first R Series Daytona, which is a complete different redesign, they need an automatic movement, but Rolex being Rolex, they're going to want the best automatic chronograph movement around. and they go to the El Primero. So I always like the fact that they kind of detuned it to 28.8 as opposed to 36,000 vibrations per hour, because they just wanted to be assured of its robustness. Although to be fair, we've now seen, 51 years after the launch of the Zenith, that actually the movement is incredibly robust. But I love the fact that actually that entire generation of Rolex Daytonas from 1988 to 2000, and actually if you think about it now, some of the most valuable watches around, because the prices have been skyrocketed, Rolex was able to change its fortunes because of the El Primero. It also, that was the watch, the 1988 Rolex Daytona was the first watch that went from a watch that was unsuccessful to having a waiting list that was just incredible. It was one of those, it created that mythology of the Daytona. And in some parts, Rolex being Rolex, it's always going to be, the king. But part of that was because it was thanks to the El Primero.
Now, you did touch on the auction a little bit earlier, and we've materialised one final cover girl for the world to bid on. Tell me about the intention of the auction and what's happening here. And by the way, I'd like to thank you for supporting our auction earlier in the year for the bushfires. It seems like we've replaced one mega crisis with an even bigger one. But thank you for your support of us, and let us get the word out about yours. What are we talking about here?
Thank you, man. Well, the first thing I should say, Andrew, is I want to thank you because I think you guys and you and Time+Tide were really a model to show like what a watch, editorial entity could do also in terms of raising awareness and trying to raise money for a
Thanks,
cause.
man.
You guys were the first ones to do it, and really respect to you, man. So we decided, and actually it was a guy from my team, Ross Povey, said, why don't we do a charity auction and then we were like, well, who should we fund? Because we want to do something international and about brotherhood and sisterhood, I guess. And he said, well, why don't we do the World Health Organization's COVID Solidarity Fund, which directs funds to wherever in the world people are most in need. And again, we don't think we're going to make a massive change from a financial perspective, because we hope to raise $100,000 from this charity auction, but just from an awareness perspective and just as a community demonstrating that, we should do whatever we can based on the great example that you set. That's why we got started on this.
This is an opportunity to get a Zenith that is long gone. Aside from the philanthropic intentions, this is a great opportunity. So down the barrel, guys, go and bid on the cover girl. And good luck in the battle for that auction. It's going to be great. And again, I'd like to thank you for, speaking of celebrations and finishing on a celebratory note, this is a video to celebrate the end of the 50th anniversary of the El Primero. Couldn't have had a better guest on it. So thank you very much for being with us. It's an absolute pleasure.
No, pleasure's mine, and really thank you for the initial inspiration. I mean, you guys started this, and we're just continuing a tradition that you guys started, all right? So thank you.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you, Wei.
Yeah, brother.
Up next is moving parts, where we go inside the case and see what's happening with the movement. And this is very fitting for this El Primero edition of Watch and Chill, because the whole episode, Michael, I've just given away who's coming up, is named after a movement. I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Michael Woods, a WOSTEP trained watchmaker. If anyone can help us with understanding why the El Primero is famous as a movement, it's this guy. Michael, welcome.
Hi Andrew, how are you?
I'm really well. I feel intimidated by your incredibly manly quarantine corona beard. It is a beautiful thing to look at.
I feel sorry for you after you shaved yours off. It does feel naked.
I do. I feel naked. It's not shaved, it's just reduced. You have a lot of experience with El Primero movements and variations of. Tell me, what is your experience with the El Primero as watchmaker?
So I've worked on the El Primero from Zenith a little bit, but most of my experience is through the Rolex interpretation or the execution of the caliber. So I worked on the 40-30 caliber when I was at Rolex as the service manager there, and it's a robust, precise, hard-wearing movement that Rolex used for close to 20 years in their Daytona reference, from the early 80s to around 2000.
Now, Michael, talk us lay people, non-watchmaker people, through the complexion of this movement. What does it look like? What are its distinguishing characteristics? What made it so such a hardy companion or partner of Rolex for all those years. Why did they choose that movement, do you think?
I think because it's of a certain quality, first of all. It looks like a traditional chronograph. There was a lot of brands obviously wanting to go towards an automatic chronograph caliber. And when obviously Zenith introduced that in 69. And in the early 80s, Rolex wanted something that didn't need to be manually wound. So they went to Zenith, who had a successful caliber in the El Primero. And they modified it slightly, but essentially at its core, it's a Zenith El Primero. And it's got a very clever winding system. They managed to keep the movement quite slim still by doing a very slim winding device on top of the chronograph. And it essentially looks still like a traditional chronograph with the column wheel and the beautiful finish on the levers. It's still of a high quality, and it just goes to show that Rolex thought highly of it. They used it for close to 20 years.
Now, Michael, tell me about a column wheel chronograph. What makes that different? What is that component that gives it its name?
Right, so the column wheel is essentially the heart of the chronograph mechanism. So there's a lot of levers that interact with this component. And there is a cam sort of chronograph, which is used in a lot of, I suppose, less expensive calibers. But the column wheel is a lot more difficult to make, and it creates a smoother action when you're using the chronograph. And it's essentially a steel component with teeth on the outside, but then columns coming up from that component. And those columns interact with quite a few different parts, and the teeth interact with quite a few different parts. And that column, when you interact with the chronograph buttons, that column will turn with each action. It's a lot more difficult to make that component. It's not stamped out. It's machined out. It's a very complex component, but it is the heart of the chronograph mechanism, and it makes the experience a lot more pleasurable when you're using a chronograph. So, yeah.
So lastly, Michael, we are talking about a movement that's a household name, which is, I think, almost on its own in that sense. Why do you think it has gained notoriety to a point where, we know about the name of this movement?
It's shown that it's reliable. It's beautiful looking, but it's very reliable. Obviously, Zenith have the 36,000 beats per hour in theirs, which makes it more accurate, and you can time it to a tenth of a second as well. You can record, and then obviously with the Defy, they've got that's upgraded, and it's got a higher beat for the chronograph. But it's just been reliable, and it's still beautiful looking, and you can have a watch with the display back, and you'll see a beautiful movement through it, and you can rely on it. It's a trusted chronograph. But I think Zenith as a company is impressive in general as well. I mean, they've gone into They care about traditional watchmaking a lot more than a lot of other brands do. They support schools with traditional watchmaking. I've got a friend that I was just speaking to the other day who he founded a school about 10 years ago, and he's a director and teacher of the school in La Locla near Zenith, and he's very close with Zenith. And he said, Henry Corpella his name is, and he said that Zenith just cares so much about education for traditional watchmaking. And that's very important. I think a lot of brands don't focus on the traditional aspects of watchmaking these days. So.
I was surprised to hear that every watch that's ever come out of the Zenith manufacturer is an in-house movement. I think that's a pretty high claim to fame, isn't it?
That is. It's incredible. Yeah, there's not many companies can actually say that these days. It's a lot easier to take another movement and modify it for what you need to do, but they're a true manufacturer, so you have to respect that. You have to respect it.
Well, Woodsy, I've always respected you. That's why I've called you in for this unenviable task of making the complex simple. So thank you very much for a quick flyover or fly through the El Primero movement. It's good to speak to you, and I hope we speak again soon.
Thank you. Great to speak to you too.
Up next, it's the top 5. And for the first time ever, it's the top 5 Instagram pictures by you guys. I've looked at hashtag Zenith, hashtag El Primero, and I've picked my 5 watches to feature. Number 1, easily the most talented Zenith photographer out there, in my opinion, is at Nice Dilly, Mr. Nice Dilly. Look at this beautiful shot of the Defy Classic in titanium. We want you back, Nice Dilly. Number 2 is Craniotes with the A384 El Primero Chronomaster Revival Shadow. Number 3 is Champs G from Brisbane with another cracking shot of the A384. Number 4 is Sharp Citron with a classic pocket shot of the A384. Number 5 is Colette Muller from Oslo, Norway, with this watch, the A386 Chronomaster in 38mm it looks to be. Well done to all, some beautiful shots. Stay safe, stay sane, and keep reading Time and Tide. Thank you.